I want to talk to you about our hands. How many hands did God? That's a silly question. But how many hands do you have that God gave you? 2. And how important are your hands? Very important, right? You do a lot of stuff with them. And that's because God planned it that way. You know, Jesus had 2 hands too. And for a lot of years, he didn't use them to heal people. He used them where? In the carpenter's shop, in his daddy's workshop. I wish I had a little chair, like Jesus, if he made a chair. Don't you wish that you have a chair that Jesus made in your home that you could sit on and feel so close to him? Well, Jesus, after he finished his working in the carpenter shop, he began his ministry. And what did he use his hands to do? What are some of the things he used his hands to do? He touched some lepers one time, right? He wasn't supposed to, but he touched them with his hands. And what happened? They were healed. When there was that storm on the sea and the disciples were scared to death, what did Jesus do? He raised his hands. When that little girl was dead and Jesus came to her house, what did he do? She was in the bed and he reached his hand towards her, held her hand with his hand, and said unto her, "Get up." And what happened? She got up. Jesus used his hands to care for people all the time. Well, you know why his enemies didn't like him? Because of all the things he did with his hands to help people. They didn't like that. That doesn't make sense. And so his enemies plotted to get him in a corner so that they could do what? Kill him. But he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was bound. His hands were bound. You know why they bound his hands? So that he would stop doing all the wonderful things that he was doing. And then they flogged him and they put a crown of thorns on his head, took him up to Calvary, and they nailed what to the cross? They nailed his hands. Why? Because that was the sign that the enemies had that they were finally victorious over Jesus. They were finally going to conquer him. So his hands were nailed to a cross and he died. And next Sabbath, next weekend, we're going to see all of that portrayed right here. And many of you are part of that. Well, here's one more thing I want to tell you about the hands of Jesus. Do you know that when you get to heaven and you see Jesus and he moves his hands around, okay, like he did when he was here, because Jesus loves, one of the things I like about Jesus is when he took the kids in his arms and he blessed them, he used his hands to do that. Well, when we get to heaven, he's going to do that. And when you look at the hands of Jesus, guess what you're going to see? The scars are still going to be in his hands. Why? Why doesn't he erase the scars? He wants to remind us what? That he died on the cross over there. How much he loves us. And that for all eternity we will never forget what Jesus did for us. Because every time we go past him, we will see his. In fact, I'd like to go up to him and say, you know, Jesus, when I was on earth, I lost my thumb in my hand. And that was really bad because my hand was out of commission for a while. And you know when I was Jesus? I had 2 surgeries not too long ago on my hands. And oh my, they were so painful and so hard. But now, you have turned all of my scars and you've given me back my stump on my hand. I have no marks, but you still have marks. And that's because he is going to want to try to make sure that I never forget that I got to heaven because of him, not because of me. So boys and girls, let's trust Jesus. Let's keep our hands in those hands now until we hold on to them and go walking down the streets of heaven one day. God bless every one of you. You may go back to the seats.